Joe Rogan has never been shy about giving blunt assessments, and his take on Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev is as uncompromising as it gets. The longtime UFC commentator admitted on his podcast that after watching Chimaev dominate du Plessis at UFC 319, he struggles to imagine a world in which the South African ever closes the gap enough to win a rematch. Du Plessis had entered the cage in Chicago with an aura of inevitability. He was the reigning middleweight champion, unbeaten in the UFC, and had built his resume with the kind of victories that force people to start using all-time great language. He stopped Robert Whittaker, tapped Israel Adesanya, and outlasted Sean Strickland in 2 separate wars. Fans and analysts alike wondered whether his awkward but effective style was simply something nobody could solve. That was until Khamzat Chimaev stepped in and turned the fight into a showcase of control and brute dominance. The bout didn't deliver highlight reel chaos, no flashy knockout, no dramatic submission. Instead, it was Chimaev overwhelming du Plessis with relentless grappling, smothering pressure, and a refusal to give the champion any space to work. The result was a one-sided unanimous decision, and for Rogan, that kind of sustained dominance over a reigning champion tells you more about the gap between them than a single knockout ever could. It's nuts, because a lot of people thought it was boring because it went to a decision, Rogan explained. But you've got to appreciate that level of dominance against a world champion. Rogan pointed out that du Plessis had been riding high as one of the most decorated middleweights in recent memory, only to look completely neutralized once the cage door closed against Chimaev. Before the fight, Dricus was being looked at as one of the greatest middleweights of all time, Rogan said, listing his signature wins. And then after that fight, you're like, I don't think he's ever going to beat that guy. I don't think there's any time in the world to bridge that gap. That's a damning verdict for du Plessis, who is still just entering his prime at 30 years old. But Rogan's perspective is rooted in how Chimaev fights, a combination of ferocity, strength, and tactical suffocation that few opponents even survive, let alone overcome. For him, it's not just about du Plessis needing to adjust, it's about Chimaev being on another level entirely. Meanwhile, the middleweight division continues to shift beneath them. Nasruddin Imavov has made it clear he feels his win over Caio Borralho should punch his ticket to a title shot. Reinier de Ridder, a former 2-division champion outside the UFC, is preparing to make his own claim when he faces Brandon Allen on October 18th. That matchup took shape after Anthony Hernandez withdrew with an injury, but de Ridder still sees it as the kind of showcase that could put him squarely in the conversation. For now, though, Chimaev holds the belt and the aura of inevitability. Whether it's du Plessis in a rematch, Imavov, or de Ridder next, Rogan's stance is clear. None of them may have the tools to halt the Chimaev train.
Merab Dvalishvili has made it clear that for him, the prestige of fighting at the UFC's historic White House event in 2026 outweighs questions of billing or placement on the card. While champions typically insist on headlining pay-per-views or commanding main event status, the bantamweight king says he'd be content fighting on the prelims if it meant stepping into the octagon on the White House lawn. The idea of the UFC staging an event in Washington, D.C. was floated after President Donald Trump publicly backed the plan as part of the 250-year celebration of American independence. Since then, speculation has run wild over which names could land on what would easily become one of the most high-profile fight cards in MMA history. Stars such as Jon Jones, Conor McGregor, and Ilia Topuria have all expressed their desire to headline. For Dvalishvili, however, just being on the lineup would be enough. I would love to fight at the White House, he said, during media obligations ahead of UFC 320. Even if I'm the first fight on the prelims, I will be happy. I have no problem with that because I know Ilia wants to fight there, McGregor wants to fight there, Jon Jones wants to fight there. That attitude is vintage Merab. The Georgian grinder has built his reputation not only on his relentless cardio and pressure-heavy style, but also on his humility and team-first mentality. While preparing to defend his bantamweight crown for the 3rd time against Corey Sandhagen on October 4 in Las Vegas, Dvalishvili still made time to look ahead to what could be the most unique event in UFC history. It isn't the first time Dvalishvili has downplayed his own star power. Earlier this year, when asked about his place in the pound-for-pound rankings, he openly ranked himself below other champions. He listed Ilya Topuria first for his undefeated record and two-division success, Islam Makhachev second for his dominance at lightweight, and Alexandra Pantoja third for his consistency at flyweight. Only then did he slot himself in at number 4, saying he preferred humility and didn't want to overlook the challenges still ahead of him. That combination of competitive fire and grounded perspective has made him a fan favorite, and also sets him apart in an era where many fighters jockey for headlines and leverage. For Dvalishvili, the White House event isn't about status, it's about being part of history. Whether he's defending his belt in the main event or opening the prelims, the machine just wants his name on that card.
IShowSpeed's meteoric rise from chaotic live streams in his bedroom to becoming one of the biggest names on the internet has now brought him straight into the heart of the UFC. The 20-year-old YouTube star, who boasts more than 15 million subscribers, recently paid a visit to the UFC Performance Institute in Las Vegas, and the trip gave fans some unforgettable moments as he crossed paths with champions, legends, and active contenders alike. The stream kicked off with Speed linking up with none other than Alex Pereira, the former UFC champ and one of the most feared strikers in MMA history. Their interaction was brief and somewhat muted, with a language barrier keeping the conversation short. Pereira, in the middle of a fight camp and deep into his weight cut for the highly anticipated UFC 320 rematch against Magomed Ankalaev, wasn't in full hype mode, but the sight of Speed towering with excitement next to Poatan was enough to make fans go wild online. From there, UFC Hall of Famer Forrest Griffin, who now works as a key figure at the UFC PI, stepped in as Speed's personal tour guide. Griffin took him through the state-of-the-art recovery and physical therapy facilities, explaining how world-class athletes rebuild their bodies after grueling training camps. Speed, as always, brought his trademark energy, joking his way through cold plunges and rehab equipment before heading to the real test, stepping inside the octagon itself. That's where things got really interesting. Speed laced up the gloves and engaged with current UFC fighters, including Caio Borralho, a highly ranked middleweight contender, and Vanessa Demopoulos, a scrappy strawweight who's made a name for herself with her jiu-jitsu. It didn't take long for Speed to realize the gulf in levels between professional fighters and everyday people. Demopoulos toyed with him in grappling exchanges, submitting him 3 times in just 10 minutes. Watching a black belt smoothly put him away left Speed in awe and, to his credit, considering actually taking up Brazilian jiu-jitsu classes. What makes the whole interaction even more telling is that Demopoulos, while undeniably skilled, has had a turbulent UFC run. Sitting at 5-5 in the promotion and currently riding a 3-fight skid, she isn't even among the elite at 115 pounds. Yet against a wildly athletic but untrained star like Speed, the difference looked like night and day. It's the kind of reality check that highlights just how high the baseline is for UFC athletes compared to even the most physically gifted casuals. The visit ended up being more than just entertainment for Speed's viewers. It gave fans an inside look at the UFC's world-class facilities, showcased interactions between one of the internet's most eccentric personalities and some of the toughest athletes alive, and even sparked conversations about the importance of grappling and discipline in MMA. For the UFC, the crossover also shows just how far the sport has seeped into mainstream culture. When influencers with millions of Gen Z fans bring their audiences into the octagon, it opens the door to a whole new wave of casual viewers.
Magomed Ankalaev has made it clear he sees himself as the man to beat at 205 pounds, and with the belt wrapped firmly around his waist, he's starting to eye the road ahead, even while keeping his focus on Alex Pereira at UFC 320.
The Russian champion captured the light heavyweight throne from Pereira in their first meeting, and on October 4th, he'll defend it in the rematch that has quickly become one of the biggest storylines of the year. Still, as dominant champions often do, Ankalaev is already keeping tabs on what comes next, because once the cage door closes and business is handled, the division won't stop moving. This weekend, Dominic Reyes and Carlos Ulberg square off in the main event of UFC Perth, and a week later, Yuri Prochaska and Khalil Rountree collide at UFC 320 in a fight with direct implications for the title picture. For Ankalaev, both bouts represent crucial moments for the division, but if he had to single one out as the most intriguing, he pointed to Reyes versus Ulberg. Through his translator, the champion explained that while Prochaska and Rountree have been around the title scene already, with Prochaska even holding the belt before, the Reyes-Ulberg fight feels fresher. Reyes has fought for the title before, but Ulberg is new, Ankalaev said. "I'm interested in that fight more than the other one." It's a telling answer because it hints that Ankalaev is keeping an eye on the next wave, rather than simply rehashing rivalries. Ulberg in particular has been riding a wave of momentum out of New Zealand, carving his way through the rankings with sharp striking and composure, while Reyes is fighting to re-establish himself after years of setbacks since his razor-thin loss to John Jones. Whoever emerges from that fight will bring a storyline that feels different, either the resurgence of a once promising contender or the rise of a new, hungry face. As for Prochaska versus Rountree, it's still a high-stakes bout with plenty of danger. Prochaska remains one of the most unpredictable fighters in the sport, a former champion who can turn fights with one sudden explosion. Rountree has built a reputation as a brutal finisher, quietly putting together a streak that has made him impossible to ignore. Either man could find themselves with a title shot depending on how things play out, but Ankalaev's perspective makes sense. He wants new blood, fresh challenges, and a chance to assert dominance over contenders he hasn't seen yet. That being said, Ankalaev wasn't about to be boxed into predicting or lobbying. He closed his comments with a reminder that the throne belongs to him. "Honestly, I don't care. I am the sitting champion, and whoever is next, I will be ready to defend my throne." It's the kind of statement you'd expect from a man who believes he can beat anyone in the division, and so far, that belief has been backed up inside the cage. Should he get past Pereira in the rematch, no small task given Potan's knockout power and ability to rise to big moments, Ankalaev will find himself in the enviable position of choosing from four compelling fresh opponents. Reyes, Ulberg, Prochaska, and Rountree each offer different stylistic puzzles, and none have shared the octagon with him before. For fans, it's an exciting picture, a dominant champion with no shortage of hungry challengers, all hoping to be the next man to test Big Ank. Kiefer Crosbie's time inside the UFC octagon looks like it has come to an end. But if his latest message is anything to go by, the Dublin-born fighter isn't quite done trading punches for a living. At 35 years old, Crosbie has officially asked for his release from the promotion, signaling the end of his mixed martial arts career after a short and frustrating stint in the UFC. The news comes just weeks after his most recent setback in Shanghai, where he was stopped in the first round by Taiyalake Nurajayi. That fight was a bitter pill for him to swallow. Not only did it mark his third straight first-round loss inside the octagon, but Crosbie was furious afterward, blasting referee Mark Goddard for not giving him enough time to recover following what he believed was an illegal knee. Despite the sting of those defeats, Crosbie's statement on Instagram struck a respectful tone. He thanked the UFC for fulfilling a dream he had carried since childhood, describing the chance to fight for the company as something he had envisioned for years. But along with that gratitude came acceptance, the acknowledgement that MMA has taken a heavy toll on his body, and that continuing down this road wasn't the best move at this stage of his life. "I would respectfully like to ask for a release," he wrote. "Just being real and think it's the right call to move on from MMA and go down other roads while I'm still in my prime. Thanks to everyone for the support." The Irishman also made it clear that this is not a farewell to combat sports entirely. In a video attached to his post, Crosbie hinted at new opportunities on the horizon and promised that his fighting spirit was still very much alive. There are plenty of other opportunities out there that I would love to explore, and plenty of fools I'd still love to humble. We ain't done. We're never done. I'll fight forever. The line feels like a clear signal that Crosbie is considering a switch to boxing or bare-knuckle fighting, both sports that have attracted a steady stream of MMA veterans in recent years. Given the damage MMA training and grappling put on his body, the pivot makes sense, and his striking-heavy style could translate well in a different rule set. If this is truly the end of Crosbie's MMA journey, he leaves behind a professional record of 10-6, which includes stints with both Bellator and the UFC. He fought 7 times for Bellator before joining the UFC roster, debuting on the same night that Sean Strickland stunned Israel Adesanya to capture the middleweight crown. While his UFC career never took off the way he hoped, 3 fights, 3 first-round losses, Crosbie's willingness to chase big opportunities and represent Irish MMA on the sport's biggest stage has earned him respect among his peers and fans back home. Ireland has always produced fiery, outspoken fighters, from Conor McGregor's rise to Ian Machado Gary's current surge toward welterweight title contention. Crosbie may not have achieved the same level of fame or success, but his story is one of persistence, grit, and a refusal to quit chasing a dream. Now, as he closes one chapter and looks ahead to whatever comes next, Crosbie's words suggest that fight fans haven't seen the last of him. Whether it's in a boxing ring, a bare-knuckle pit, or some other arena, BDK seems determined to prove that he's still got plenty of fight left to give.